Okay, so he'll join later. Meanwhile, we'll start. Am I audible, Mohit? Hello, Sandeep.
You're audible.
Okay, so we'll start. We'll start inheritance. So, what is inheritance? Already you have learned in Java, right? Yeah. Please, Sandeep, mute your audio.
Sir, we discussed just two access specifiers, protected, private. What about private or public? What about protected? I was late for yesterday's class.
Okay, fine. So, inheritance. So, what is inheritance? The process in which one class acquires properties of another class. This is called as inheritance. So, the process in which one class acquires properties of another class. So, what do you mean by that? Say, for example, there are two classes. Give me 1 minute. So, for example, there are two classes, say A and B. So, now when we say one class acquiring properties of another class, say for example, B class acquires properties of A class. So, we can represent symbolically as, so though it is not the universally or internationally accepted symbolic representation, I'm just for your understanding sake, I'm saying. So, I took an arrow mark pointing towards B from A, which means that all the properties of A are acquired by B. So, in this case, we call A as superclass. If it is in Java, we use the term superclass. But in Python, we use another term called base class. So, I'll write it as oblique base class, right? And coming to B, what is it called as? Subclass or derived class. Okay, so in this process, B will not have only the properties that are required from A. And what do you mean by properties? First, properties means it includes all the attributes, that is variables of the class and methods of the class. So B can have its own exclusive members other than the members of class A. Say if A is having two method in two variables and two methods, say for example, it doesn't mean that B will also have the same two uh, variables and two methods. Instead, it may have other additional exclusive classes which are exclusive only to B. So if it is having the same methods and same variables, then there is no need of deriving a class from the existing class A, right? So when we'll go for inheritance, we'll go for inheritance only when we want to add some special features, additional features to the existing class, but you don't want to disturb that existing class. At times you may want to have only those properties or features which are there in that existing class, but some other times you may want to have some additional features. So what we can do is, instead of modifying the class A, we can create a new class by extending that existing class. That means we can uh, make a class B a subclass or derived class for A in such a way that all the members of class A will also become members of class B, and additionally B class will have its own features. So if you want to have all the features including the B class, then you can create an object for class B and access the members of class B without the necessity of creating object for class A. And whenever you want to access only the features of A, then in that case you can create object for class A only and access those members, right? So that is the reason why we go for inheritance. So now that you understood what is superclass or base class and what is subclass and derived class, let us see some example programs. What is the syntax for creating a subclass for an existing class, and then see a program. So the syntax is, now if there is a class A existing class and you want to make class B as subclass for class A, then you need to define that class B like this. Okay, so after the name of the class B, when you are defining class B, within the parenthesis mention the superclass. That means from whichever class you want to acquire the properties. If it is in Java, what we'll do, we'll use a keyword called extends keyword. So the same thing you write in Java like this, right? So this is how you use the syntax for making a class B as subclass for class A, right? But instead of this, we don't have any keyword for that one. Instead, whichever class you want to make superclass, after the class name, you just mention the superclass name in the parenthesis. So automatically A will become superclass for B. Okay. So this is the syntax we need to follow. So now let us see an example program. So look at this program. So first I'm creating one class called person, and I'm defining a constructor init method for this person class. So it receives two parameters other than the self, f name and l name, which stands for first name and last name. Then I'm creating two object variables, self dot first name is equal to f name and self dot last name is equal to l name, right? Then I'm defining a method called print name method, which does not receive any parameter other than self. Then it is simply printing, what is it doing, it is simply printing the values first name and last name. So you know, in print statement you can write you can mention two or more variables, separating them by a comma. So when you separate them by a comma, you will get a one single space between the first value and second value, right? So we have seen at the beginning how to use print statement, right? So in that way, this will print first name, then followed by a space last name. So this is the person class. Then I'm defining another class called student, and now I'm making this student class subclass for person. How to make that student class as subclass for person class? Simply after the name of the student class, you just mention to which class you want to make this as subclass. You mention it in parenthesis. Okay, then followed by a colon symbol as usual. So in this class, what I'm defining is, I'm defining a method called sinfo. I'm defining a method called sinfo, which receives two parameters other than self, rnvo and branch. Then I'm creating two object variables, self dot roll number, and assigning self dot roll number with rnvo, self dot branch with branch. Then I'm printing the roll number and branch values using the print statement. So this is what you're doing in student. And next I'm creating one more class C, class called employee, and even employee is also made a subclass for person class. So in this I'm creating a method called einfo. So this receives two parameters other than self. The first one is EID and second one is DEPT. Then two object variables, EID and DEPT, self.EID and self.DEPT. Both these are. So then I'm initializing self.EID and self.DEPT with EID and DEPT values, and simply printing their employee ID and department. So what do you understand from these three classes? Both student class and employee class are inheriting the properties of person class. So in person class, I'm simply having first name and last name. So this person can be anyone. He can be a student or he can be a employee, right? So irrespective of whether he is student or employee, all of the both these people will have a first name and last name concept, right? So these are common features that every person will have. So that's why I defined two object variables for storing the first name and last name, and one method called print name, which will print the complete name of that person irrespective of whether he is a student or a employee. He is going to We are going to display the first name and last name. Then coming to student, he'll have a roll number and branch, but coming to faculty or employee, they'll not have a roll number, right, and branch concept. Instead they'll have employee ID and department. Instead of using the term branch, they'll use a department, they'll use the term department. So these are exclusive properties, right? So person will not have EID and DEPT. Similarly student will not have EID and DEPT. Similarly employee will not have roll number and branch, right? So that's why we are defining these properties in separate classes called student and employee. But both these will have a commonly first name and last name. So the common thing is defined in person, and after that what we are doing is we are simply extending, that is you are making student as subclass for person, so that we can store the name using this superclass first name and last name variables. But coming to roll number and branch, we'll use exclusively in student class. Similarly for employee also, first name and last name we can get it from the superclass, and EID and department you can access them by from the employee class. So if you want to access only employee details, you can create an object for employee class and access einfo method, so that you will get that EID and department. If you want to access students details, you can create an object for student class. In order to get a person, that is first name and last name, we need to create an object for person, right? But anyhow, even if you don't create object for person, nothing will happen, because student will automatically acquire both the methods print name as well as the object variables first name and last name as part of student. So instead of creating object for person, you can create object for student only in case of student, and in case of employee you can create an object for uh, employee only, class only, right? But I must show you the difference, right? So that's the reason why I'm creating. See, if you observe the statements which are after these three class definitions, that is person, student and employee, first what I'm doing is I'm creating object for person class. So using that person class object, I'm simply passing two parameters. What are those two parameters for init method? First name and last name, right? So f name and l name. So I'm passing those two string values using double quotes separated by comma. Tarakeshwar Rao and Vandarapu. then simply I'm calling a print name method. So where is a print name method? In person class. So I can call that print name method using person object directly. So this will print the same string as output. Then after that I'm creating an object for employee. So in this case also I'm passing the same strings. Okay. So uh, you can access employee information by using object e, right, and calling the method einfo. So for einfo what I'm passing, two parameters, eid and dept. So eid is a string 4016 and department is csc. I'm passing them. So after you pass them, the same info einfo method, what it will do when it is executed, it will assign that values 4016 and csc to eid and dept object variables and then print them using the print statements, right? Then after that what I am doing is I'm creating an object for student class, that is s. So for student class I'm passing vinay krishna as a first name and nelly as last name. So simply I'm calling this s dot print name first, and then s dot s info. S dot print name, what is it going to do? It is going to invoke this print name method, right? So print name method, what is this going to do? It is going to display first name and last name. So it will display vinay krishna nelly. Then when I call s info will assign roll number and branch values, that is 540 and csc. So their values will be printed again from the s info method only. We are not having an exclusive method for displaying the student information and exclusive method for even employee information also. The same method we using which you are initializing the roll number and branch for student, even it displays the same roll number and branch values also. Similarly, in case of employees e-info also, this is used both for initializing the values for EID and DEPT and then again print the same values. Two things are done in the same method. We are not creating separate methods. To read one method and to display another method, you can use in that way also, but it is not necessary. Simply I'm creating one single method for performing both the operation for read as well as for displaying. Okay, so when you run this program, what will be the output? For employee, I'm not calling e dot print name, I'm calling it with p dot print name because I have created object p also for person. So using p object I'm calling print name. So instead of doing this way, what you can do the other way is create an object for employee like this, then you need not use this person class object, right? Simply if you call e info, this is a uh, if you call print name using the e object also, just like you did for student object s, I'm calling s dot print name. Similarly I can even call e dot print name also, that will display same employee name, first name and last name, right? But instead of that I am doing this way. You can eliminate this process. So now let me run the program and show you the output. 3, for displaying employee information we are creating two objects, one is person object, the other one is employee object. But for displaying student information we are simply creating only one object, that is for student class, and displaying using the same student object his name as well as his roll number and branch. But coming to employee, we are using to display his name the print name method of person class, by creating person object, but to display EID and department we are using e-info method. We are calling e-info method. So instead of this, what I can do, instead of creating a person object, yeah, I can eliminate this person object creation and use the same employee object to call the print name method. So this way also I can do, right? I'll call e dot print name. So you'll get the same output. So inheritance is very simple. Uh, you can inherit the properties of one class to another class by simply creating a subclass like this in this way and enclosing within the parentheses, that is within the brackets, whichever class you want to make it a superclass for this class, that class name. Okay. So now let us get back to the inheritance concept. So now that you understood how to create a subclass from an existing class, so what are the different types of inheritance you have? So Python allows us inheritance to be implemented in these five ways. First one is single inheritance. Second one is multiple inheritance. Third one is multi-level inheritance. Fourth one is hierarchical inheritance, and the last one, the fifth one is it is called with two names: hybrid or multipath inheritance. Okay, so you know what is single inheritance? Single inheritance means, what is the meaning of single inheritance? So there will be only one subclass and there will be only one superclass. Okay, so that is single inheritance. So what is the type of inheritance that we implemented in the previous program here?
Single inheritance.
Is it single inheritance?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
How can you call it as single inheritance? Justify your answer.
You are initialized three classes, sir. But first two classes you have say class B is inherited from class A. So that is a single inheritance, sir. Next,
Uh,
class C is inherited from again class A. So that is also single inheritance. So here there is no multiple inheritance. Like class C is not inherited from class B.
okay. So let me complete the description for the remaining inheritances also. Then once again you think and give me the answer back. So when you are implementing single inheritance, that means your program will have one class, which will be only the subclass, sorry, superclass, and it will have only one subclass. So let me share my, instead of sharing this one, I'll share you a whiteboard so that you'll understand. I can make a pictorial representation. Is the whiteboard visible to you?
Yes, sir.
So there is one class A and class B. So only only one class called class B will inherit the properties from class A. Similarly, class A's properties only class A properties will be inherited only to class B. If, say, for example, there is another class, say C, this class C will not inherit any properties from class A, even though the class A exists in your program. You are not inheriting the properties of A to C. You are inheriting only to one class, that is class B. So, if you want to implement single inheritance in your program, what does it means if you are having multiple classes, say for example in this case there are three classes, class A and class B, class C, then only two classes will have a relationship. That means either class A and class B, or class A and class C, or class B and class C. So I can make class B a subclass for class A, that's it. So I cannot make again class C a subclass for class A, or even I cannot make class C subclass for class B. So this is single inheritance. That means there will be only one superclass and there will be only one subclass. So that is what we mentioned here, right? And now if you are having if you are making class C also a subclass for class A, that means what, you have one superclass but there are multiple subclasses, that means more than one subclass. Got my point?
Yes, sir.
So now both classes B and C will acquire properties from class A. So in this case, how many subclasses are there? More than one subclass is there, and there is only one superclass. So what is this type of inheritance? This will be hierarchical
Hierarchy.
hierarchical inheritance. Okay. So now if you observe, one class is acquiring properties from more than one class, right? So that is from class A and class B. So the properties of class A as well as class B also will be acquired by class C. So here in this case, how many superclasses are there and how many subclasses are there? There are more than one superclass and there is only one subclass. So what is this called as? This is called as multiple inheritance. So in this case, class A will inherit properties to class B and again class B will inherit properties to another class, say C. That means what? One subclass will have another subclass. So this is called as multi-level inheritance. So you have one more than one superclasses, class B and class A. Both are superclasses, right? And you have more than one subclasses as well. Class B is subclass for A and class C is subclass for B. So that means totally how many subclasses are there? Two subclasses are there. And how many superclasses are there? Two superclasses. A is a superclass for B and B is a superclass for C, right? But the concept is one subclass is uh, superclass for another subclass. So this must be definitely available irrespective of how many superclasses and how many subclasses are there, right? Then then we call this as what is this called as multi-level inheritance. So this is one level, this is another level, and this is another level. So again, you can have C can also have another subclass, say D. So in that way also you can do. So in that case, how many superclasses will be there? Three superclasses and three subclasses will be there, right? So this is multi-level inheritance. So what is that we are left over with? Hybrid inheritance. So hybrid inheritance is a combination of any of these four. That means you can you have implemented here multi-level inheritance, right? So at the same time you can make another subclass for say B. Then what is that going to be? When you take B and C, that is B, C, and D, it is going to become a hierarchical inheritance. Let me show it. So when you consider only class B, class C, and class D, so what is this type of inheritance? This will become hierarchical inheritance, right? So when you consider this, what is this going to be? Only when you consider class B, class C, class D, there is one superclass and there are two subclasses. So what is this? It is a hierarchical inheritance. But when you consider class A, class B, and class C, so what is this going to be? One subclass class B is having another class subclass C. So what is that called? Multi-level inheritance. Even when you consider class A, class B, and class D, so this is also one subclass having another subclass, class D. That is, class B is a superclass for class D, and again class A is superclass for class B. So this is also another example of multi-level inheritance. So altogether you have two multi-level inheritances and one hierarchical inheritance in this example, right? So you are combining two inheritances. One is multi-level, the other one is hierarchical inheritance. So in that way, when you combine any of those four, any two of the four previous inheritances other than the hybrid or multipath inheritance, so that will become the hybrid inheritance. This we can also call it as multipath inheritance. So now tell me, what is this type of inheritance, Sandeep, that we used in this program?
Yes, sir. Hierarchical.
It's a hierarchical inheritance, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. So this example will become hierarchical inheritance. Fine. So let me show this another one. So we are creating a class A and simply defining only one constructor init method, passing two parameters to the init method x and y. Object variables a and b, self dot a and self dot b, are initialized with x and y values respectively. Then we are creating a class B, which is a superclass for class A, right? Then I am defining init method for this, that is a constructor. And what I am doing here in the constructor, I'm making a call to the init method of what? Class A. So how to make that? Mention the class A name dot init method. So it is just like super keyword. It is just like super keyword. So what is the purpose of super keyword in case of inheritances? If you want to access the superclass constructor, we use super keyword. That is one purpose. And if there are more than one methods which are part of both superclass and subclass with same name, then when you're accessing that method using a subclass object, the superclass method will be hidden. So to access the hidden methods of superclass, we'll use subclass, right? So because we are accessing init method, that is a constructor of subclass. If you want to access the constructor of superclass, then we need to make a call to this init method from class B. So how to call it? Using the superclass name followed by dot and the init method like this, and pass the parameters self comma x comma y. So what I am doing in the program, I put this in comment. This is a object for which class? Class A. But I'm creating another object called B1. This is object for class B. So look at how many parameters are passed to constructor of class B. Four parameters: x comma y comma m comma n. So that's why when you create an object for class B, you need to pass four parameters. So I'm passing 5, 10, 15, and 25. So x will be copied with 5, y will be copied with 10, m will be copied with 15, and n will be copied with 25. Okay. Then you are making a call to init method of the superclass. So to that, what you are passing? Xy. What is the value of x and y? 5, 10. So 5, 10 will be passed to xy. So they will be assigned to self dot a and self dot b. So as far as class A is concerned, when we create object b1 for class B, a object variable A will have 5, object variable B will have 10. And then after this, what you're doing, you're initializing object variables for class B, exclusive object variables, right? Self dot c and self dot d with m and n. What are m and n values? 15 and 25. So what do you understand from this is A has one constructor and B has one constructor. Other than constructor, we don't have any other methods. But class A is having two object variables A and B, and class B, along with object variables A and B, it is also having additionally its own object variables C and D. So altogether class B will have how many object variables? Four object variables. One is A, second one is B, third one is C, and fourth one is D, right? So after creating object B1, what I am doing is in the print statement, to access the value of A, I am simply using the object B1 and calling A B1 dot A. To access value of B, B1 dot B. Similarly, to access the value of C and D, I am using the same object B1, B1.C and B1.D. Okay. If I don't create object for B, if I create object for A1, then I can that is for class A, that is A1, then I can access only A and B values. I cannot access C and D values because A has only two members, A and B. C and D are part of only B. They are not part of A. But coming to B, along with C and D, it also has A and B of class A. So, using object B1, we can access all the four variables A, B, C, D. But using object for class A, you can access only A, B. You cannot access C and D. So, let us run this program. So, what is the output? A value is 5, B value is 10, C value is 15, D value is 25. So now let me make a change. Now I'll remove this comment. So now what will be the output? So first it will print 510. As far as object A1 is concerned, A value will be 5 and B value will be 10. So for better understanding, let me change these values. So using object of class A value is 100, B value is 200. Using object of class B, A value is 5, B value is 10, and using object of class B, C value is 15 and D value is 25. If I try to access C and D with object A1, so you will get an error. First print statement will work. Object of class A is equal to 10 and B is A is equal to 100 and B is equal to 200. This will work. This statement will work, right? So you'll get an error with this statement because class A does not have object variable C and D, so you cannot access them with object A. So that's why you'll get an error. What is that error? A object has no attribute C. Even if you correct this C, instead of C, if I give say, because it has only A, if I give A, this will be okay, but here you will get an error because there is no D even. So what is error? A object has no attribute D, right? So you cannot access with superclass object subclass exclusive object variables or members. Whatever members are there in class A, only those members you can access, irrespective of whether they are variables or methods. You can access them, okay, using object A. But using same object A, you cannot access the members of class B, which are not part of class A. That is exclusive members. So in the example, what are exclusive members for class B? C and D. So these are exclusive members of class B. So they cannot be accessed using A. So that's why you'll get an error here, right? So now it will work because I put it in comment. Okay. So now that you understood how to create how to inherit properties of one class to another class, can you implement the remaining inheritances? Hybrid inheritance, multi-level inheritance, multiple inheritance. Will you try?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, will you try for tomorrow's class so that if you are able to do it, okay, we'll discuss it once again. If you are unable to do it, I'll tell you that one. But remember some points, important points. This multi-level inheritance, this is not supported in Java. So
I inter
this multi-level inheritance is not supported by Java. Instead of multi-level inheritance implemented using classes, we have another concept called interfaces, right? So we can implement multi-level functionality. Sorry, not multi-level, multiple inheritance. This multiple inheritance is not supported by Java. So instead of availing this functionality using classes, we can avail this functionality, or we can get that functionality using another concept called interfaces in Java. But Python is not so. Interfaces are not that useful in Python. So we have multiple inheritance supported in Python for even with classes. So that's why we'll be able to create multiple inheritance in Python programming. So what is multiple inheritance? One class having more than one superclass, right? So I can make class A and class B as superclasses for class C. So you can write a program in that way. So that will become a multiple inheritance. Multi-level inheritance means A is superclass for B, and B is in turn superclass for another class C. So that is multi-level inheritance. So you can write programs implementing these other three inheritances. We have already implemented single inheritance and hierarchical inheritance. So try to implement multiple, multi-level and hybrid inheritance. So will you do it for tomorrow?
okay, sir.
Okay, it will be a practice for you, and then we'll discuss. Even if you do it, also we'll discuss it again tomorrow, and then we'll go for the next topic. So, related to inheritance, there are many other topics we need to discuss, right? Even in Java, also, you have something called method overloading, abstract classes, all these things. So, we'll discuss those concepts even in Python also. So, once we complete this inheritance concept, okay.
Okay, sir.